I had always prided myself on being independent. Fresh out of college, I moved to the city with nothing but a backpack, a part-time barista job, and a stubborn belief that I could make it on my own. Life in the city was exciting, chaotic, and, most of the time, expensive. My small apartment in a crumbling brick building in downtown seemed like a steal, but the rent was high for what it was, and I was barely scraping by. That month, things had gone from barely scraping by to plummeting into financial freefall. My hours at the coffee shop had been cut, and a big medical bill from my mom had eaten the last of my savings. I was behind on rent by 2 weeks, and I knew the knock on my door could come at any moment. When it finally happened, it wasn't the stern, booming voice I expected. "Hey, Mia," the voice said softly. My landlord, Lucas, was standing in the doorway. Lucas was, well, he was exactly the kind of man you couldn't ignore. Tall, broad-shouldered, with those stormy gray eyes that seemed to look right through you. He wore a faint smile, one that made my stomach tighten in ways I didn't want to admit. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I know I'm behind." He held up a hand, cutting me off. "I know. I'm not here to scold you." I blinked. That was unexpected. Most landlords I'd dealt with had a very black and white approach: pay up, or leave. Lucas was different. He leaned against the doorframe casually, and for a moment, I noticed things I hadn't before: the curve of his jaw, the way his shirt clung to broad shoulders, the faint scent of cologne that was oddly comforting. "I have an offer," he said finally. "Something a bit unusual." I swallowed. Okay." He smiled, and it was that kind of smile that made your heart do stupid little flips. "If you're willing, you could work off the rent." "Work off the rent?" I repeated, unsure if I'd misheard. "Yeah," he said. "I've got some projects around the building. Small stuff. Cleaning, painting, organizing storage. Nothing too crazy." I hesitated. Pride and embarrassment warred inside me. But honestly, I was desperate. I guess that could work," I said finally. Lucas's smile widened, and I felt a flutter in my chest that I immediately tried to hide. "Great. We can start tomorrow. Just come to my office in the morning, and I'll show you what needs doing." The next day, I arrived early, armed with cleaning gloves and a determined expression. Lucas greeted me with a casual, "Good morning, Mia. Ready to get started?" He showed me around the building: dusty corners, peeling paint, and a basement full of boxes that seemed to weigh 100 pounds each. As we worked, something strange happened. The tension between us, the kind that had been subtle but undeniable since the day I moved in, began to simmer beneath the surface. Every time he brushed past me to hand me a tool, or leaned close to show me a spot that needed cleaning, I felt a heat creeping up my neck. By the third day, I noticed him watching me more often than necessary. Not in a creepy way, at least, I didn't think so, but in a way that made my pulse race. One afternoon, as we were moving old furniture from the lobby to the storage room, his hand brushed mine. A fleeting touch, accidental, I told myself. But then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You're stronger than I expected." "Thanks," I muttered, trying not to melt right there in front of him. He chuckled. "Don't be embarrassed. I'm serious." By the end of the week, the building was practically sparkling. The floors shone, the storage was organized, and the paint on the walls made the place feel almost like new. And yet, despite all the work we had done together, the tension hadn't dissipated, it had intensified. There were moments when we'd catch each other staring, or linger just a little too long in conversation, or find reasons to brush against one another. It was during one of these moments, while we were putting the last of the boxes away, that Lucas did something completely unexpected. He leaned against the wall, his gaze locked on mine, and said, "I've been thinking." My heart skipped a beat. "About what?" "About you." His voice was low, measured, but there was an intensity there that made my knees weak. "About us." I laughed nervously, trying to mask the rapid beating of my heart. "Us? What? I mean, we barely know each other." He stepped closer, cutting me off. "I know, but I feel like I've known you longer than I should. I can't stop thinking about you, Mia. And I don't think you've been able to ignore it either." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Could this really be happening? Was my landlord, the man who had been a kind but professional figure in my life, confessing desire? Before I could respond, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His hand lingered, and my chest tightened in anticipation. "If you feel the same way," he whispered, "I want to explore it. No games, no complications, just us." I blinked, my mind spinning. I did feel the same way. The thought had crossed my mind countless times in these few days of working together, but hearing him say it aloud made my pulse race and my head spin. I think I do, I admitted softly. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed or sloppy, it was slow, deliberate, a kiss that spoke of everything unsaid between us. The work, the tension, the glances that lingered too long, all of it culminated in this moment. My hands found their way to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, matching my own. Over the next few weeks, our relationship unfolded in ways I hadn't imagined. Working off my rent became a backdrop to something much more intoxicating. We'd spend hours together fixing things, laughing, teasing each other, the air charged with a mix of attraction and tenderness. Every touch, every glance, every accidental brush of hands sent shivers down my spine. We kept it private, of course. Lucas was professional in public, and I was careful not to let anything slip to neighbors. But in the quiet of the building after hours, we explored this connection that had sprung up between us, a connection that felt inevitable, yet forbidden in a way that only made it more thrilling. One evening, after we had finished painting the hallway, we sat on the stairs, exhausted but exhilarated. I leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't just make that offer because I'm a nice guy. I did it because I wanted more time with you. Closer. Honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about you." I turned to look at him, my heart in my throat. You were thinking about me while I was behind on rent." He smirked. "Yes. And every moment since then. Every day, I wondered if you'd feel the same way. And now, here we are." I laughed softly, shaking my head in disbelief. "I can't believe this. I'm your tenant, and now, we're this." He kissed me again, softer this time, lingering, his forehead resting against mine. "It doesn't matter who pays rent, Mia. What matters is this, us." By the end of the month, my rent was fully worked off, but our relationship had only deepened. What began as desperation and awkward tension had blossomed into something real, passionate, and unexpected. Lucas wasn't just my landlord anymore, he was my confidant, my partner, the man who had made my life feel thrilling in ways I'd never imagined. And every time I walked through the doors of that old brick building, now sparkling and alive with our work, I felt that flutter of excitement because behind the walls, in the quiet corners, in the soft shadows of our little world, we had found something far more valuable than rent. We had found each other.